In today's video, we're going to be looking at something that is very important, something that you will need to know going forward, especially if you are a Bricks user. From the release of Bricks 2.0, actually, this has been in Bricks for a while and a lot of people did not know, and it has to do with the Cascade layer. But from 2.0, Cascade layer is now a default option. And in this video, I want to let you know what this concept is. And it's not just about the Bricks settings. It is going to help your CSS going forward. It's really going to change the way you understand CSS. So this video is going to teach you a lot of things, and not just that it's going to help you to solve only Bricks related problem, but it's going to help you solve other CSS problem and understand how they work. Now, if you go to your Bricks settings under the performance tab, you're going to see an option here, and it's called Cascade Layer, and the option is enabled by default. So you have the option to disable it, and it says discouraged. In previous version of Bricks, it was disabled by default and you had to enable it. But from 2.0, you are only given the option to disable, but you are not, it's not recommended, because going forward, Bricks will only support issues that has to do with this feature enabled. To understand what CSS layer is, we have to start from the basics. So this is a page built with Bricks, and we have a box here, and this box has an ID of box and classes. It has 3 classes: red, blue, and purple. We also have a slider here. This is from Bricks Nestable Slider, and these 2 things are going to help us to understand what CSS layer is. This is going to help us understand what CSS layer is, and this is going to help us understand how to tackle CSS layer, the Cascade layer in Bricks. So we're going to be using the dev tool on the browser console to do this, so we can see what is happening live. So I'm going to go to the style panel. I'm going to hit this button here to create a new style rule that will create a new inspector style sheet. I'm going to click there, and then we have what we are working with. So I'm going to delete everything there. Now first, let's talk about CSS. So I'm going to start by applying 3 CSS rules to target this box, and I'm going to start with the red class, and the background is going to be red. Actually, I usually recommend that you write color in full, because if you write background, it's going to query all the background properties. For example, if I write background, it still works, but if you come here to the front end, and you will see, if I select that and I expand this, you're going to see that it's just shows everything that has to do with background, image, position, and all that. But if you did color, you're just getting, you're just getting background color, and you don't have all the other. It's just a good practice. It doesn't hurt anything, but it's just a cleaner thing to do. Now let's do another rule. So the next rule is blue, and I'm going to say background color blue. And then I'm going to do another rule, and we're going to have a background color of purple. So what did we notice? We noticed that each successive CSS rule that we added overwrote the previous one. Now, that is why CSS is called cascading style sheet. That's the full meaning of CSS. So it means that the rules cascade on each other. That means the successive rule will have a higher priority than the previous one, basically. Now, there are exceptions to this, so let's demonstrate this. So if I take the blue one and put it after this, the blue, it's going to be blue, and all these other ones will be ignored. So if we go back to that element and select it, here, you will see that blue is active, but the other ones are cancelled out because it is the last in the cascading order. That means it has a higher authority than the previous one. So, but there's an exception to this. If we were to use the ID of box, and we say background color black, and we see that it doesn't matter the order, that the box has a higher specificity. And when I say specificity, I want you to understand that what it actually means is it has a higher authority than the others, irrespective of the order. So the authority of the CSS rules differ. If they all have the same authority, the last one is just going to win, because these all have the same authority. They have the same specificity. So you have red because they are all classes. So when you have 3 classes giving instructions, with all of them having the same authority, they have the same specificity, then the last one, the one that gives the last instruction, will always win. But if something with a higher authority comes, it will win out all the rest because it has a higher authority. So an ID usually has a higher authority than the classes. But if you want to boost the specificity of a class, sometimes you have to add important. So if I add important here, you see blue wins. It doesn't matter the order right now. If I had important here, purple wins, irrespective of the order. Even if I take this and place it here, the purple will always win. All right, because it has important. But it is not usually recommended to add important. That is why you have to understand these CSS concepts so that you will structure your CSS in such a way that does not require you to use important unless it is absolutely necessary. Now, what does this have to do with Cascade Layer? Let's say I take this, let me remove this completely. CSS Cascade Layer is a way to group CSS into different priority group. So if I say add layer and then I write red, I have created a red layer. I've created a CSS Cascade Layer called red, and I'm going to move my red rule into the red layer. I'm going to do the same for the rest of them. Now, when you create layers like this, in this manner, they all work the same way the CSS rules were working. They all have the same authority, and the one that comes last will always take priority. So if I take this layer and place it here, the blue wins, just like that. Now, but with CSS layer, there's a smarter way to define the order of importance. So how to do that? We're going to say add layer, and then we're going to write out each of the layer separated by a comma. So I'm going to say red, comma, I'm going to say purple, and I'm going to say blue. By the way, we need to put that, because if you don't put this, it's going to break. This is not going to work. So you have to put that semicolon to close it out, just like you would put if you have another, declaration inside this rule. So now the blue layer here is the last one, okay? And this defines the order. Now, if I happen to take the blue layer and place it in the middle, it doesn't matter the order. As long as it comes last, it will have a higher level of priority. So if I want to change the order of importance, which layer should win, I'm going to have to swap this around. So let's say I take the red one and place it at the last one. You see, the red wins. If I take the purple and place it as the last one, the purple wins, even if my blue layer comes last. So now that we have gotten that out of the way, what has this got to do with the bricks layer? Now let's go to the console. If you go to your console, you may have noticed a new icon since you started using Bricks 2.0. And this, if you toggle this, you're going to see what is called, now let's turn off our layers first. I'm just going to comment everything out. Let's look at the bricks layer. So if you click this, you're going to see CSS layers. And if you go to any bricks default CSS, you're going to see layer bricks, and if you click here, it's also going to open that. It's showing you the bricks layers. Now notice that they all have numbers. The first defined layer is bricks. And bricks, inside bricks, you have reset, Gutenberg, and icons. Now, why is it nested inside? Because when you declare a layer, you can nest a layer inside a layer, okay? But the numbers here are one of the most important things. Now, the layer with the highest number is the layer that would win. When you have CSS rules inside the layer, it doesn't matter what it is. So let's say in our own case, our purple layer should win, right? Now, let's say I come here and define another rule with my ID box and say background color black. And remember that ID is supposed to have a higher level of priority. Let's look at what is happening on the front end. Background color purple wins. Background color of ID did not win. Why? Because, let's look, we have our orders. Now you can see our own orders, blue, red, and purple. The CSS rule that was declared using the ID is inside the blue layer. But if you look at the layers, you see that the blue layer has an order, an importance of 4, while the purple layer has a higher level of importance, 6. So in CSS layer, the layer with the highest number will always override the layers with a lower number. So purple will always win every order here from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. The purple layer will always win. The only layer that will win every other layer is what you call the implicit outer layer. The outer layer is a layer that has not been defined by the user. It's the default layer. That means if I come here outside a layer and write blue background color blue, that will win even if it is here. So you can see that even with the ID declaration, this wins because this lives in the explicit outer layer. So let's scroll and find that declaration of, you see, it's not inside any layer, while the other one is inside a purple layer, red layer, and blue layer. So this layer is a rule, is your default rule that you write in your bricks, in the settings, in the custom CSS, because you are not wrapping it inside any layer. But there's one important thing we have to take note of. There's one exception. Now, before we do anything, let's delete this, okay? So if we go to that blue layer and add importance, wow, the blue layer wins, even if it has a lower level of priority, but it wins. Why? Because when it comes to CSS layer, the rules are reversed when we have a CSS rule with importance. And if the least layer has an important rule in it, all the higher layers cannot override it. The only layer that can override this blue layer are layers that are lesser than it, which means either the bricks, reset, Gutenberg, or icon. Those are the only layers that can override, because when it comes to important, like I said, I have to repeat it, when it comes to important rules in CSS, the least layer will have the highest priority. Now that means this reset layer, if there is an important rule in this reset layer, no other layer here can override that rule. That brings us to the problem that a lot of people are facing with bricks. Now, because bricks is defined at layer 3, now we're going to remove all that. We're going to just do this. Let's now deal with bricks. Because bricks is defined at layer 3, and our layer is an implicit outer layer. That means that if you have a CSS rule in the bricks layer that has importance, it is literally impossible for your CSS to override it. Let's take a look. Now we have a slider here, and this is a bricks element, and that slider has if you choose a custom arrow, you're going to have this class. Now let's close this. Now that class, this is bricks default CSS. So it has this split arrows.custom, and it's set to display block. Now I'm going to copy that rule. By the way, when you go here, copy rule will copy. Let me show you what it means. The whole of this is called a rule. This is called a selector. The whole of this is called a declaration. Just this is called a property. Just this, a property, and this is called value. So a CSS rule comprises all the selectors, the properties, the values. So when you go here and you right click on this, copy selector will copy only the selector. Copy rule will copy every rule. Then copy declaration will only copy just display important block. So first of all, I want to add some styling to this. So we're going to give it a background color of yellow, and I want the height. It doesn't have a height. I want to give it a height of 100 pixels. So we see what we are doing here. Now this is set to display block by default, so I'm going to just remove that from our own CSS because it's already here. Okay, it's already set to display block here. So this is bricks default CSS. This is our CSS. Now in our CSS lives in the explicit outer layer, which has supposed to have a higher priority, but because the bricks layer has important, automatically the bricks layer will now have this rule will have more priority, would be prioritized over every other layer that has a higher number than bricks layer, okay, which is the outer layer. So let's say we want to display to be none. Now, if we say display none, it's not working. So it's cancelled out, okay? It doesn't work. Let's add important. Good. Now, notice what happens. When we add important, it appears to work and display block is crossed out, but it's still not displaying none. Did you notice that? Did you notice that it has been cancelled? Normally, when it is cancelled, it means that this one wins, because that is naturally what is supposed to happen. But because this is in a lower layer than this with an important rule, it will always prevail no matter what. No matter what we do, even if we use an ID here, it will prevail. So what is the solution? Let's go back to our box. We have a blue layer that has important. The only way we can override this blue layer is to add another layer. Let's just call it override. Okay? And then if I come here and say add layer override, and then I just maybe take any other thing and put there and write important, because you have to use important, because this is using important, so you have to use important. So let me just remove important from this purple so that we can focus on this too. Now the override now is a layer that has a lower priority than the blue, but now its important will override the important in the blue. But there is a better way to do it. Instead of keep adding, you add, what if you have an important here and you want to override it again? You keep adding. No, don't do that. So let's leave this. I'm going to take this out so we don't need to add. So what you can do instead is you can say, now if we add that and go here, you can see that we have added another layer, 4, which is, lower than blue. But we don't have to keep adding layers. So instead of adding, I'm going to remove this. But I'm just going to say, instead of doing override, I'm just going to say blue.override. Now, when you say blue.override and you go here, you're going to notice something, that the override is nested under the blue. Even though you did not explicitly create an override layer, is the same thing as saying layer override, taking that layer override and placing it inside the blue layer. So that means you are nesting the override layer inside blue, and we're still going to have the same result. So the override layer is nested in, but instead of doing this, which is more complicated, instead of doing that, you just do blue.override, and the CSS is going to automatically nest it under. Now, so having learned that, let's collapse this again and go back to our slider. Now you notice that the bricks layer has 3 nested layers inside it, and the one with the lowest priority is the reset layer. That means that the only layer that can override all the layers' important declaration is the reset layer. Of course, Gutenberg can reset icon with importance. Icon can reset bricks because icon is lower if bricks layer has importance. Now, but the layer that has the most powerful importance is the reset layer. And that reset layer, any CSS that you place in that reset layer with important can never be overridden by any other CSS except the reset layer itself. And in this case, you're going to have to depend on the importance. So let's look at this. So in order to make this CSS work, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and just focus on, let's focus on, the important part, because we are not messing with this. This can live in the outer layer. You don't want to put all your CSS in a layer that you want to use in overriding. You want to put it only in the layer, only the rule that is important, which is display none. That is what we're focusing on. If I say add layer, remember the reset layer. Now, if we say reset and put this, you notice that it's not working, but it's supposed to work, right? Because it's lower than the bricks layer. But let's look at it. You see, it creates another layer, reset. So you might think that, we have a reset layer, and you write reset, but you can see that it is not targeting this reset. It is creating a separate layer. To target this, because it is nested in the bricks layer, what you have to say is bricks.reset. Boom. And once we did that, the display none, where is it, moves to a bricks.reset layer. You see, you can see now it's reset. And it wins. Finally, we have a layer that the display none wins, even when this is supposed to have a higher priority. You can see that this seems to be winning and this is crossed out. But because it's inside the layer with the least level of importance, with an importance rule, let me rephrase that. Because this rule is inside a layer with the least priority, but because it has important rule in it, it will always override. To be frank, you are not limited to that. Bricks already has this layer, so we use it. But even if you want to call yours override, it's still going to work. It's just going to automatically create an override layer inside the bricks layer. You see, it's creating an override layer, which is number 3. And bricks layer is number 4, so it's still gonna work. But why do you want to create a layer that is lower than reset when you want to override stuff? It doesn't make sense. So instead, you just use the reset that is already the least layer there, and you're gonna solve any problem you want to solve. And this is not only limited to doing stuff with bricks. You can use this to organize your CSS into order of importance. So I hope that is clear. If you have any questions, please put it in the comment section. And please, if you benefited or you learned something from this video, I would like you to hit the like button and share this video with others so that they can also learn. Please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. Until next time, have a great day. Bye.